Have you ever felt a chill in the air? A sense of being watched when no one is there? In the autumn of 1888, that feeling wasn't just a feeling. It was a reality. In the desperate, gaslit heart of London, a monster was born, given a name by our own hands, and then, just as quickly, allowed to vanish into the fog of history. We call him Jack the Ripper. But this isn't a story about a phantom. This is a story about failure. It's a story about a system that broke, about clues that were trampled into the mud, and about women who were screaming for justice from their graves. The most terrifying question isn't who Jack the Ripper was. It's why was he never caught? What went so wrong? Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe, like and share our channel. Sometimes sharing a single bed in 3 8-hour shifts. Imagine the air, thick with the smoke of coal fires and the stench of raw sewage running in the streets. Imagine the darkness, a suffocating blanket barely punctured by weak gaslight, where a man could appear and disappear in a heartbeat. The police themselves were so afraid of this district that they often refused to enter its darkest corners unless in pairs. Wasn't this the perfect hunting ground? A place where the desperate and the forgotten were easy prey? A city within a city that had already turned its back on its own people, long before the killer arrived. The killer didn't just choose Whitechapel, in a way, Whitechapel created him. We call them the Canonical Five, a cold, academic term for a heartbreaking reality. But they were women before they were victims. They had names. They had stories. Mary Ann Nichols, a mother of 5, separated from her husband, trying to survive day by day. Annie Chapman, once a respectable married woman, fallen on hard times after the death of her child. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, murdered on the same night, in what became known as the double event. Both struggling with poverty and alcoholism, yet both were known for their moments of kindness. And Mary Jane Kelly, the youngest at just 25. She was said to have a beautiful voice, a flicker of a bright future that was brutally extinguished in the grim reality of her small room on Miller's Court. These women were trapped by poverty, forced into the dangerous night to find the few pennies needed for a bed. Did the world see them as disposable? Was their struggle, their very existence, the first tragic flaw in this investigation? Because it seems their lives only started to matter the moment they were taken away. Today, the first 24 hours of a murder investigation are critical. The crime scene is a sacred text, holding microscopic clues to the killer's identity. But in 1888, the concept of crime scene preservation didn't exist. When the body of Mary Ann Nichols was found, the scene was immediately flooded. Police, doctors, and curious onlookers trampled through the area, their boots grinding potential evidence into the dirt. What was lost? A footprint? A button? A single hair from the killer? Worse, in their haste to restore public order, the police would often wash the blood from the streets within hours of discovering a body. Think about that. They washed the evidence away. They literally erased the killer's tracks. How can you hunt a ghost when you willingly wipe away his footprints? The investigation wasn't just flawed from the start, it was crippled. It was an open wound, contaminated before the first detective even had a chance to ask, what happened here? We must be fair. The detectives of 1888 were working in the dark, handicapped by the limits of their time. Today, a single drop of blood or a stray fingerprint can solve a case. Back then, those clues were invisible. There was no DNA analysis. No blood typing. Fingerprinting wouldn't be adopted by Scotland Yard for another decade. The police had to rely on the most fallible of tools, eyewitness testimony, which was a mess of conflicting descriptions, and basic autopsy reports. The medical examinations could determine the cause of death and the horrific nature of the mutilations, even suggesting the killer had some anatomical knowledge. But they couldn't offer a name. They couldn't offer a face. They even resorted to bizarre theories, like photographing a victim's eyes in the vain hope that the killer's image was burned onto her retinas. They were fighting a new breed of monster with ancient weapons. How do you prove a suspect was there when the very concept of physical proof was still in its infancy? The greatest flaw wasn't incompetence, it was time itself. The science that could have unmasked him hadn't been born yet. And then, everything changed. A letter arrived at London's central news agency. Dripping with arrogance and taunting the police, it was filled with details of the crimes. And for the first time, it was signed with a new, chilling name. Jack the Ripper. The press, hungry for a sensation, published it. And in doing so, they may have committed the single greatest blunder of the entire investigation. Why? Because most experts now believe this letter, the very document that gave the killer his immortal name, was a hoax. Likely written by a journalist to sell more papers. But the damage was done. The public frenzy exploded. Hundreds of copycat letters poured in, burying the police in a mountain of false leads. The investigation was no longer a hunt for a man, it was a circus. The press didn't just report the story, they created a villain, a terrifying celebrity out of a murderer. Did this journalistic greed give the real killer a shield to hide behind? Did it turn a police investigation into a public spectacle, allowing the man of flesh and blood to slip away while the world was chasing a phantom with a catchy name? Behind the scenes, the very forces meant to protect the city were in disarray. There was bitter rivalry between the Metropolitan Police and the City of London Police, whose jurisdictions bordered each other. Communication was poor, egos clashed, and morale among the detectives on the ground was dangerously low after years of internal squabbles. They were overwhelmed, under-equipped, fighting the press, and sometimes, fighting each other. So we are left here, over a century later, in the fog. A contaminated crime scene. A non-existent science. A media-fueled panic. And a fractured police force. These weren't just mistakes. They were the ingredients for a perfect escape. The story of Jack the Ripper isn't just about the terror he caused. It's a chilling lesson in how our own systems, our own fears, and our own flaws can conspire to let a monster win. He was never caught. The files were closed. But the ghost of Whitechapel still walks. Not just in those old, dark alleys, but in the unanswered question that haunts us to this day. For more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like, and share with others. Thank you for your support.